Chapter 17 of the Devil's Arithmetic. "There is a plan," Gittel whispered, "and Yitzchak and Shmuel are part of it." She had crept onto the sleeping shelf, putting her arms around Hannah and speaking very softly into her ear. "You must not be afraid, but you must not tell anyone. I am a part of it too." Hannah didn't move. Gittel's voice tickled her ear. "The reason I'm telling you this is that you are our only flesh and blood, our only link with the past. If something happens to us, you must remember. Promise me, Chaya, you will remember." Hannah's lips moved, but no sound came out. "Promise." "I will remember." The words forced themselves out through her stiffened lips. "Good." "What plan?" Hannah managed to ask. "If I tell you, you might say." "Never." "You would not mean to, but it could slip out." "Not even if I feel brennen und bruten, even if you should be burned and roasted." Here that is not a proverb to be spoken aloud. Horrified at what she'd said, Hannah felt herself begin to giggle. It was a hysterical reaction, but she couldn't seem to control herself. "Nevertheless," Gittel ended, "I will not tell you." "When?" Hannah whispered. "You will know." The horn signaled morning roll call, and Gittel rolled off the shelf. Hannah followed, stood, and stared at her. Is it because of Reuven?" she asked quietly. "For Yitzchak it is. Who else does he have left, poor man? He adored those children," Gittel said. "But why you? Why Shmuel? If not us, who? If not now, when?" Gittel smiled. "I think I've heard those words before," Hannah said slowly. "You will hear them again," Gittel promised. "Now we must not talk about this any more." And yet for all of Gittel's promises, nothing seemed to happen. The day's routines were as before, the only change being the constant redness of the sky as trainloads of nameless zugongi were shipped along the rails of death. Still the camp seemed curiously lightened because of it, as if everyone knew that as long as others were processed, they would not be. A simple bit of mathematics, like subtraction, where one taken away from the top line becomes one added on to the bottom. The Devil's Arithmetic. "When?" she whispered at night to Gittel. "You will know," Gittel always answered. "You will know." And yet when it finally happened, Hannah was surprised that she hadn't known, hadn't even suspected. There had been no signs or portents, no secret signals. Just an ordinary day in the camp, and at night she went to bed on the hard, coverless shelf, trying to remember sheets and pillows and quilts, while all around her in the black barrack she heard the breathy sounds of sleeping women. A hand on her back and over her mouth startled her so, she was too surprised to protest. "Chaya, it is now," Gittel's voice whispered in her ear. "Nod if you understand." She nodded, opening her eyes wide, though it was too dark to see anything. "The plan," she said, her words hot on Gittel's palm. She sat up abruptly and just missed smacking her head on the upper shelf. Gittel took her hand away. "Follow me," she whispered. "Am I part of the plan?" "Of course, child. Did you think we would leave you in this hell?" They crept to the door, and Hannah could feel her heart thudding madly. It was warm in the barrack, yet she felt cold. "Here," Gittel whispered, shoving something into her hands. Hannah looked down. She could see nothing in the dark, but she realized she was holding a pair of shoes. "We'll put them on outside." They paused at the door, then Gittel eased it open slowly. It protested mildly. "It's not locked," Hannah said, shocked. "Some guards can be bribed," Gittel whispered. "Give me your hand." Slipping her hand into Gittle's, Hannah held back for a moment. What about Fega? Shmuel wouldn't go without Fega. Gittle's hand on hers tightened. Fega said she prefers the dark wolf she knows to the dark one she does not. Even with Shmuel going? But she loves him. She has come to love her next bowl of soup more, Gittle said. Now hush. They slipped through the door, shut it, and locked it from the outside with a too loud snick. Hannah shivered at the sound and took Gittle's hand again, ice on ice. We meet behind the midden, Gittle whispered. No more talking now. Hannah looked up. There was no moon. Above them, in the cloudless sky, stars were scattered as thick as sand. A small, warm breeze blew across the compound. Night insects chirruped. Hannah took a deep breath. The air was sweet-smelling, fresh, new. A dog barked suddenly, and a harsh voice quieted it with a command. Gittle pulled Hannah back against the barracks wall. Hannah could feel the fear threatening to scream out of her, so she dropped the shoes and put both hands over her mouth, effectively gagging herself. There was a wetness under her arms, between her legs, down her back. She moaned. And then there came a shout, a shot, and another rumbling staccato. A man began to scream, high-pitched and horrible. He called a single phrase over and over and over. Ribono shel olam. Quickly, Gittle whispered hoarsely. It is ruined. Before the lights. Come. She spoke. As she spoke, great spotlights raked the compound, missing them by inches and seeking the outer perimeter of wire fence and minefields and the woods beyond, where Hannah thought she saw shadows, chasing shadows into the dark trees. Gittle dragged her back to the barracks door, slid the bolt open with one hand, and shoved Hannah inside with the other. They both sank gratefully to the floor. What is it? The Blockova's voice called out from her private room. Hannah's mouth opened. What could they say? They would be found out. They would be chosen. I went to get my bowl to relieve myself, Gittle called, her voice incredibly calm. And then shots began outside, and I was so frightened I fell to the floor, dropping the bowl. She pushed Hannah away from her as she spoke. Crawling on her hands and knees, Hannah made it back across the room to her sleeping shelf. She lifted herself onto it gratefully, trembling so hard she was sure she would wake everyone. You Jews, the Blockova's voice drawled sleepily. You can never do anything quietly or efficiently. That is why the Germans will finish you all off. If you have to relieve yourself, wait until the morning, or do it in your bed, or you shall have to deal with me. Yes, Blockova, Gittle answered. And get to bed, Blockova added unnecessarily. Instead of going to her own shelf, Gittle crowded in with Hannah, hugging her so tightly that Hannah could hardly breathe. Yet she was glad not to have to lie there alone. Leaning back against Gittle, Hannah could feel the woman shaking with silent sobs. Then a sudden awful thought came to her. She couldn't turn over with Gittle there on the shelf, so she whispered to the wall, Gittle, please. At last Gittle heard. What is it? The shoes, Gittle. I dropped the shoes outside. They'll know it was me out there. What will I do? What will I do? Do, the breathy voice whispered into her ear. Do? Why, you will do nothing, my darling child. Those were not your shoes. They were the Blockova's. I took them from outside her door because you deserved a better pair for such a difficult journey. They will discover her shoes in the morning. She began to laugh, muffling it against Hannah's back, a sound so close to sobbing that Hannah could not tell the difference.